You are listening to the International Radio Report. Your reactions are much appreciated. Feel free to send them to radioreport@yahoo.com. That is, radioreport@yahoo.com. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, to the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. It's Sunday, August the 31st. Already. It's scary how fast the year is going, coming into September. My name's Sheldon. I'm here with Gilles, and we have our usual 30 minutes of news and information of things going on in the world of radio for you. We thank you for tuning in today. A lot of different stories today, so we'll get things rolling along right away. We will give you all of our contact information at the end of the program. So, Gilles, you have a story starting off today with a malfunction in Montreal radio.
So Bell's Montreal radio station back on the air after major malfunction disrupted broadcasts. And this comes from the Montreal Gazette from August 26th. Bell Media's Montreal radio stations were knocked off the air Sunday by technical difficulties that disrupted live broadcasts. Listeners to English language stations CJ 8800, TSN 690, and Virgin Radio Montreal first reported silence on the airwaves Sunday morning. The affected stations all have their studios at the Bell Media's building. In statements on social media, both CJ 8800 and TSN 690 told audiences that they are currently experiencing technical difficulties that are impacting our on-air signal and online stream. Virgin Radio Montreal confirmed it was affected by the same outage. In a Facebook video, host Kelly Alexander explained the scale of the problem. "I'm sure you hear the silence, and so do we. And all the fancy gear behind me, the mixing boards and the screens are all supposed to be lit up right now, like Christmas trees. But we are having technical difficulties, and we have our engineers on site trying to make sure we get on the air as soon as possible." The outage also affected CHOM 97.7, along with Bell's French language 107.3 Rouge and Énergie 94.3. Longtime CHOM host Pete Marier posted a video from the studio describing what he called unprecedented. "I'm in the control room at CHOM. Well, as you can see, the screens have all gone dark. The radio console has gone dark as well. I have never seen anything like that. It's obviously a major malfunction that's happening in our engineering department," he said. "Patience. This is affecting everyone in the building here at René Lévesque and Papineau." By mid-afternoon, the stations were back broadcasting, though no details were given about what caused the outage. Audiences were still able to access highlights from past broadcasts on the station's website during the downtime. Amid the outage, Mary appeared to remain in good spirits. "Hey, at least the coffee machine still works. I'm on my 8th cup." No reason given? That's kind of weird. You would think that at least Bell Media would just post a little something saying, "Yeah, we had this technical issue here, and now everything's fixed, and this is the reason why." Why are you not saying anything? That is kind of bizarre.
Yeah, it's obviously if the coffee machine was working and what have you, it wasn't a hydro electricity issue. It was something with their operating system that shut everything down. So anyways, everything back to normal in a very quick period of time, but odd that they wouldn't sort of say, exactly what happened. But sometimes you don't want to air out your dirty laundry. Maybe somebody tripped over something and pulled a plug, and it took them a half a day to figure out which plug had to be put back in or something. Who knows?
And that's what happens when everything is in the same building on the same system.
We have a major ham radio story out of Canada next. Canadian provinces are making amateur radio operators an official part of extreme weather planning. This was an article in the Globe and Mail newspaper. During the ice storm of 1998, power lines and transmission towers in Quebec and Ontario collapsed under layers of ice, taking out communications and leaving millions of people stranded without electricity and unable to communicate their plight. In many cities, radio hams, amateur radio operators, often communicating on battery-powered sets from their basements, stepped up to keep channels open to the emergency services and to help people connect to loved ones and stay updated on evolving disaster plans. More recently, radio hams deployed their skills in Yukon, where wildfires knocked out communications in 2024. Local hams kept transmitting on their shortwave radios to keep people in touch and informed. As wildfires, floods, and hurricanes and other extreme weather events increase, many provinces are integrating radio hams' skills into their official preparations for emergencies, especially if other forms of communications fail. Ham radio tends to be more resilient than newer forms of communication if there is a disaster. They can keep running on batteries or with portable aerials and generators. Last month, the Government of Ontario approved $545,000 for the Amateurs Association. Other territories and provinces, including Yukon and Nova Scotia, are preparing backup plans in which radio hams could play a crucial role, while in British Columbia, radio hams are already being integrated into disaster planning. In an ice storm earlier this year in Orillia, Ontario, where cell phone communication was sporadic, local amateur enthusiasts were able to augment existing communications. Mr. Boyd said under the auxiliary plans, trained operators could also be flown in to help out local hams. The training would include how to rig up antennas and operate a portable generator. By investing in a growing network of Ontario Core partners like Radio Amateurs of Canada, our government is providing GPS services, satellite phones, ham radios, and other critical communication supports across the province, including our most remote regions, to support emergency responders when disaster strikes. Yukon's local hams have already stepped in to provide remote areas with emergency communications during disasters. Shane Scarnellis, manager of response operations at the Yukon Emergency Measures Organization, said ham radio operators were essential during the 2024 telecommunications outage. In British Columbia, preparations to integrate ham radio operators' skills in the Provincial Emergency Radio Communication Service are far advanced. The BC government has also been encouraging First Nations communities and municipalities to prepare alternative communications if cell phones go down, including by establishing an amateur radio station. This is something that I've had personal experience with. Back in our ice storm that they talked about in 1998, we actually had a network of ham radio operators running off of various sources. Batteries, I was operating here from home using car batteries, and we had a network of hams coordinating with emergency services. We had a station set up at the Red Cross in Montreal and at some of the municipalities in their city halls and what have you. We even received certificates from the Quebec government for the work that was done by the ham radio community during that ice storm. So this is a sort of an extension of all of that, and realizing that ham radio will certainly be vital when those other forms of communications go down.
What everybody sees when they get into, say, my shack here, it's, oh, you do CB. No, I'm an amateur radio operator. It's different, and we actually can do much more than CBers. And this is a great example to put amateurs on the map, show the population that, well, we can help in times of disasters. Maybe we'll save your life someday because of communications that will go through, because we are able to communicate even when nothing else works. So I find this really, really a positive thing.
Yeah, it's encouraging, too, to see that they're putting some money into it to get the proper equipment that's needed and to move people around when it's necessary. But also important is to really train the people properly into, you are working in a delicate situation. Vital communications are necessary. Coordination with other types of services needs to be handled properly. So I'm glad to see that they're doing it in a very organized way and that they're receiving some support to do it properly as well.
So next we have an audio clip, and it is a very interesting story. It's the history of the American Forces Network is brought to life at Washington Area Broadcasting Museum. So this is by Alexander Banerjee, Stars and Stripes. And let's listen to the clip.
History of AFN brought to life at Washington Area Broadcasting Museum, the National Capital Radio and Television Museum in Bowie, Maryland. On Saturday opened a new exhibit on the history of the American Forces Network, the military's broadcasting service for service members stationed overseas. AFN is an important chapter in the history of broadcasting, NCRTV Museum Director Mark Sledziewski told Stars and Stripes. AFN had a large cultural impact by bringing the latest in American culture to service members stationed overseas, helping them understand what their loved ones back home were following, and it remains very active to this day, Sledziewski said. Especially during, the Second World War and some of the conflicts in Southeast Asia, AFN brought in lots of big talent, he said. Sledziewski noted that AFN also helps American culture permeate into the overseas communities that troops are stationed in. The initial impetus for the exhibit was the AFN's director, who is a member of the museum and approached its staff with the idea. The American Forces Network has a very rich broadcast history, but it's pretty unknown to most civilians, Sledziewski said. So he wanted to partner with us to help share AFN's story through the lens of broadcast history. The exhibit includes an interactive component that lets visitors cycle through clips of hit broadcasts from decades ago. While the broadcasts were in English, they featured commercials for foreign audiences, which museum visitors can listen to. An audio component lets visitors hear PSAs for troops that took the spot of commercials during broadcasts, such as reminders to maintain M16 rifles properly. The exhibit also has some of the personal effects of the AFN's first director, Tom Lewis. As the museum is fewer than 30 miles from Fort Meade, Maryland, where AFN is headquartered, museum staff were able to make site visits to the base, although most of the objects featured in the exhibit came from an AFN office in California. Admission to the NCRTV Museum is $7 for adults, free for children under age 5, and $5 for seniors, students, and local residents. The museum is open on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Blue Star families can receive free admission to the museum until September 1st, after which admission is discounted. As with other Blue Star museums, admission will be free again starting from Armed Forces Day in 2026. More information can be found on the museum's website.
Interesting museum, and interesting history. If you've been listening for a long, long time on shortwave, long time ago, we've all been going across the American Forces Network on shortwave. Some of us even maybe listening to some baseball games, and there's all sorts of communications and things that we're going through now. It still exists in different forms. It can exist as local stations or streaming on the internet, but this is nice to see that they're going to have some history in the museum.
Yeah, it's important to keep that history accessible to people. Even if you know nothing about radio or never used these services, somebody showing up at the museum taking a look will realize that, hey, this is pretty neat that this was being done, even if we didn't know anything about it before.
So what's happening with our sun? Well, our sun is waking up in a big way. One of the sunspots is actually 1/3 the size of the sunspot that created the Carrington event in 1859. So it's pretty big, and it could harbor energy for very powerful flares. And since they are pretty much Earth-directed now, if anything happens, we'll know about it. The sunspot number, 201. The solar flux, 232. As we're recording, we haven't seen that high of a number for a long time. So to witness all of this, well, you got to turn on a radio and listen.
Hey, IRR listeners, there's another program, World of Radio, now well over 2,000 weekly editions, with multiple broadcasts on two major shortwave stations in the U.S., WRMI and WBCQ. Also IRRS in Europe and Unique Radio in Australia. There are several chances to hear me, Glenn Hauser, on Sunday evenings, among others, and podcasts on demand. Full schedule info plus loads of other material, especially about shortwave, at worldofradio.com.
We have an update to a story we've been following, actually, over the past number of months of a new longwave radio station in Finland. Arctic Radio 252 kilohertz longwave. This comes from Mike Terry via Glenn Hauser's World of Radio IO group. August the 24th marked the first broadcast of audio material on the new 252 kilohertz longwave transmitter. The transmitter is currently running at 600 watt carrier, 750 to 800 watt peak modulation. So, longwave is back in Finland after 32 years without it. Those who said it cannot be done are proven wrong. So a target to shoot for coming out of Finland. As we go into the winter months especially, North Americans might have a better shot at trying to hear this station on longwave and eventually full service on the frequency of 252 longwave Arctic Radio in Finland.
And don't forget, if you can't hear it at home, you can try on Kiwi SDRs online in the vicinity of Finland, and I'm sure you will be able to hear it on one of those Kiwi SDRs.
Now, you were talking about Romanian broadcasting on your YouTube channel the other day, things going on over there and what their future might be, and now you have a story about it.
Yeah, it's a little complicated. It's getting tough because the Romanian government is having huge deficits, and it's going to have an impact possibly on broadcasting. So this is via Luca Trifan of Radio Magazine Facebook group and done Medium Wave Info. Our friend and loyal reader, Luca Trifan in Romania, informs us that on Tuesday the 19th, the Romanian National Audiovisual Council, the CNA, debated Radio Romania's decision to reduce the number of hours of medium wave and long wave programming. The council members emphasized the strategic importance of the medium wave network and expressed their dissatisfaction at the lack of prior warning of such a reduction. An investigation will be carried out into the effects of this reduction and its real impact on listeners. Sanctions could be imposed. At the same time, the director of Radiocom, the state-owned company responsible for maintaining the transmitters, warned that such a reduction, even if temporary, would lead to increased costs for the company, mainly due to personnel costs, as each medium wave and long wave stations is served by at least one technician and several guards, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He estimates that Radiocom can bear these additional costs for a few weeks, after which additional funding will be needed. Razvan Lodinka, the director of Radio Romania, justified the reduction with budgetary constraints, the alternative being the elimination of shortwave broadcasting and consequently of Radio Romania International, as its internet satellite audiences are too small to justify its existence without shortwave. Mr. Dinka hopes that the medium wave service will be fully restored as soon as possible, but that this will require additional public funding. The suspension of long-wave, medium-wave broadcasts between 2200 and 0554 Romanian time is scheduled to last until the end of the year, after which it will be reviewed, subject to an increase in the budget for 2026. On a more personal note, I am very disappointed by the lack of coverage of this issue in the national press, even on the stations concerned, like Radio Romania Actuality and Radio Antenna Satelor. On the other hand, it is virtually impossible to buy a radio capable of receiving long waves today. And with the increase in maintenance and operating costs, the future of 153 kilohertz is uncertain. Yeah, there are some problems. I've been actually hearing both on Radio Romania's letterbox show and even reading some things here and there about the Romanian government having big deficits. It's trying to find places to cut. And Romania Broadcasting is where some of the funding cuts have happened. This is one of the reasons Radio Romania usually uses two frequencies to transmit at any given time. They've been only operating on one for every broadcast because they have to keep some of the transmitters off. So this is, how it starts sometimes, the danger of losing broadcasters. And here they're saying that Radio Romania has to remain on shortwave. If it doesn't, the satellite and streaming is not big enough to maintain such a service. So hopefully, maybe in 2026, the funding could come back or things could improve, and let's cross our fingers that it does.
Yeah, it's one of the few international services out of Europe that we can still hear on conventional shortwave radio. A lot of them have disappeared, so we hope we don't lose that one as well. We have a breaking story that came in just before we began recording, and it comes from the New York Times by Minho Kim. Judge blocks Trump's firing of the head of Voice of America. A federal judge blocked the Trump administration on Thursday from firing the director of Voice of America, a federally funded news network that provided independent reporting in countries with limited press freedom. The judge, Royce C. Lamberth, of the U.S. District Court in the District of Columbia, ruled that Trump officials cannot remove the director, Mike Abramowitz, without approval from the International Broadcasting Advisory Board, a bipartisan board designed to check political influence on federally funded newsrooms. The applicable statutory requirements could not be clearer. The director of Voice of America may only be removed if such action has been approved by a majority vote of the board, Judge Lamberth wrote. He added, "There is no longer a question of whether the termination was unlawful." The ruling is a setback to President Trump and Kari Lake, a fierce Trump ally, who has led efforts to close federally funded news networks, including Voice of America, which the White House had accused of left-wing bias and spreading radical and anti-Trump propaganda. Mr. Abramowitz said in a statement that it was critical for the government to continue U.S.-supported news broadcasting to countries with authoritarian governments that suppress independent journalism and spread anti-American rhetoric. He said he was gratified that Judge Lamberth found that Trump officials must follow the law as Congress mandated, and added that Voice of America's programming is so important for the security and influence of the United States. The administration's lawyers had argued to Judge Lamberth that the law limiting the president's authority to fire Mr. Abramowitz was an unconstitutional check on executive power. They also claimed that the court lacked jurisdiction, as Congress established the Merit System Protection Board for federal employment disputes. Mr. Trump has also moved to fire members of that board. Ms. Lake said the administration planned to appeal the ruling, calling it absurd. Elections have consequences, and President Trump runs the executive branch. She said in an email, "I have confidence that the Constitution will eventually be enforced." Trump officials had moved to fire Mr. Abramowitz on August the 1st after he refused to accept reassignment as a chief management officer of a Voice of America radio station in North Carolina that the network had used to provide shortwave radio broadcasts to Latin America and West Africa. Voice of America had stopped broadcasting to those regions in March after Mr. Trump put nearly all of the organization's employees on paid leave. In June, the administration had tried and failed to lay off nearly all 1,300 of Voice of America's reporters and support staff. The network now broadcasts in only 4 languages: Persian, Mandarin, and 2 languages in Afghanistan, Dari and Pashto. Before, it aired news programs in 49 languages to 360 million people every week, including Russia, China, and Iran. VOA's programming remains drastically curtailed despite an April order from Judge Lamberth that the administration restore the network to serve as a consistently reliable and authoritative source of news. It is unlikely that the administration could quickly consent from the advisory board to fire Mr. Abramowitz. A few days after his inauguration, President Trump fired 6 of the 7 board members, leaving only Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who automatically serves because he heads the State Department. At least 4 members, excluding Mr. Rubio, are required for the board to vote. The 6 members beside Mr. Rubio must be confirmed by the Senate, and none has been replaced. The defendants do not even feign that their efforts to remove Abramowitz comply with the statutory requirement, Judge Lamberth wrote on Thursday. How could they, when the board has been without a quorum since January? Congress established the advisory board in 2020 after President Trump's appointee to lead Voice of America's parent agency, the U.S. Agency for Global Media, was accused of trying to turn federally funded news agencies into a mouthpiece for the administration by firing the leadership of the newsrooms. A federal investigation later found that the appointee, Michael Pack, had grossly mismanaged the Agency for Global Media by sidelining executives he felt did not sufficiently support Mr. Trump. We will keep monitoring it and see where it goes next.
So we have some amateur radio, the expeditions, and special events.
I have a few new ones popping on the air in the next week or two. First, from the Solomon Islands, Bernard, Delta Lima 2 Gulf Alpha Charlie, will be active as Hotel 44 Mike Sierra from Manakwe Village, Malatia Island, which is Iota OC 047, and Solomon Islands during September through December 2025 and January to April of 2026. He'll be operating on 40 through 6 meters using single sideband and FT8.
We have Mali, Jeff, using the call sign Tango Zulu 4 Alpha Mike, will be active again from Mali during September to December 2025. He will be working from 80 to 6 meter bands.
Staying in Africa, Rwanda, Harold, Delta Foxtrot 2 Whiskey Oscar, will once again be operating as 9 X-Ray 2 Alpha Whiskey, starting from September 1st for 3 weeks. Operations will be from 160 through 10 meters, and he's using it all. CWSSB, FT4, QO100 also. And you look on QRZ.com for more information about the Rwanda operation.
For those that wonder, QO100 is an amateur radio satellite. Palau, Yasu, Juliet, Hotel 2, Delta Foxtrot Juliet, will be operating as Tango 88 Delta Fox between September 2nd and September 12th. The operation is from 160 to 6 meters using satellites, CW, SSB, and digital modes.
And finally, Annobon Island and Equatorial Guinea. Yuri, Yankee Lima 2 Gulf Mike, and Eugene, Echo Alpha 5 Echo Lima, will operate from Equatorial Guinea using 3 Charlie 3 Whiskey, Annobon Island using 3 Charlie 0 Whiskey in September of 2025. The plan is to be on the air for 2 weeks from Annobon. The dates depending on the ferry schedule, and while waiting to ferry to the island, they will operate in Equatorial Guinea with the 3 Charlie 3 Whiskey call sign.
And so we are out of time.
We thank you for tuning in. As usual, if you'd like to reach us, our email address is radioreport@yahoo.com. Our show is live streamed and archived on the CKUT website, ckut.ca here in Montreal. Our Facebook group, International Radio Report, we invite you to join the group there. And go to our YouTube channel if you'd like to listen to our show that way and listen to previous shows as well, youtube.com/@IRR, and you can subscribe to the channel as well. Have a great week, everybody. Check out those solar conditions. It might get kind of interesting over the next little while. And we'll have all that news and other news for you again next week here on the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.